First created by Tetsuro Yoshida, Yokai Monsters essentially defined a horror trilogy that released in the late 1960s focused on Japanese mythological entities known as yokai or strange things. Over time, these films became such huge hits that they've created an entire subgenre of Japanese horror films that are inspired by folklore and take traditional monsters and place them in settings that would send a shiver down audiences' spines. Today, we're going to be exploring some yokai movie gems that defined haunted folklore and tell you everything about them. Before we get into this list though, we do have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to the channel. It's a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. Kwaidan, 1964. Directed by Masaki Kobayashi, Kwaidan is a 1964 anthology horror film inspired by Lafcadio Hearn's collection of Japanese folk tales. The film's title is essentially an archaic transliteration of the word kaidan, which means ghost story, and the film follows four unrelated horror stories that were such a huge hit. The film received an award at the Cannes Film Festival as well as an Oscar nom. The first short story, The Black Hair, follows an impoverished swordsman in Kyoto as he decides to divorce his wife and marry another woman from a wealthier family, only to realize he might have committed a grave mistake. As the plot thickens, he ends up coming across his ex-wife's rotted corpse, and it's not long before the swordsman finds himself cornered by his ex-wife, who seems to have some ideas on how to punish him. The second entry, The Woman of the Snow, follows two woodcutters as they encounter a Japanese yokai, or monster, known as a Yuji Onna, and many fans have declared this part to be their favorite among the anthology. This story soon gives way to the third entry, Oichi the Earless, which follows a young blind musician who recites stories from historic battles and ends up in the court of the dead emperor. Finally, the last story follows an old tale of Lord Nakagawa Sadono's attendant named Sekinai, and the story is narrated through the lens of an author trying to impress his publisher. This film was quite an early entry in the yokai genre, and it was actually released 4 years before the Yokai Monsters trilogy carved a niche for this subgenre of Japanese horror films. However, it is regarded as one of the best entries that focuses on Japanese mythology and is a beautiful, almost poetic ode to the mythological writing of Lafcadio Hearn. Onibaba, 1964. Also titled The Hole, Onibaba was a 1964 Japanese historical drama film that was written and directed by Kanito Shindo. The film takes place during the Civil War in Kyoto in the middle of the 14th century and is categorized as a yokai movie due to the yokai demon known as an Oni who makes an appearance. Derived from ancient Japanese folklore, the Oni women are known for turning into monsters due to karma and resentment, and the younger Oni are known as Kijo, while the older women are labeled as Onibaba. While there are no obvious references to the characters being demons, the plot follows an older and younger woman as they ambush soldiers, kill them, and then steal their armor and weapons in order to survive. Their attempts at defeating the fleeing soldiers seem to be going smoothly until they end up meeting their old neighbor, Hachi, who had managed to return from war. As Hachi starts making sexual advances on the younger woman, we learn that the younger woman was married to the older woman's son, Kishi. Unfortunately, Kishi was killed during the war after he was caught stealing food, and the older woman starts blaming Hachi for her son's death while trying to get her daughter-in-law to stay away from him. The supernatural elements creep in as the older woman tries to seduce Hachi and eventually wears the clothes of a dead samurai to scare her daughter-in-law and convince her to stay away from her son's alleged killer. Amidst the chaos, the older woman also ends up wearing the mask of a dead samurai and eventually fails to take the mask off. Moreover, the mask seems to be associated with supernatural forces and has bound itself to the wearer's face, an unfortunate twist that convinces the daughter-in-law that the older woman has transformed into a demonic entity. Set against a rural background, Onibaba makes perfect use of black and white cinema to portray murder, jealousy, and the human need for survival against a dark era in Japan's history, and it's quite a dramatic spin on traditional horror. While the movie doesn't introduce us to any yokai monsters right off the bat, the film's title and context cues do keep us on our toes and make this film quite an intriguing entry within this folklore horror subgenre. Kuroneko, 1968. Adapted from a supernatural folktale, Kuroneko, or The Black Cat, was a 1968 Japanese historical drama within the horror genre, and it was also directed by Kaneko Shindo. The film's plot revolved around the vengeful spirits known as Onryo, who are known within Japanese folklore as wrathful ghosts that can cause great harm in the world in their mission to exact vengeance. Typically, the Onryo are depicted as women who have been wronged during their mortal lives, and the film truly represents this theme by introducing the Onryo Onryo as a woman and her daughter-in-law who had died at the hands of a samurai group. Moreover, the samurai assaulted them before killing them and burning their house down, and they eventually return as Onryo in the form of fine ladies who wait at Rajomon and track the samurai troop down. They also lure them to an illusory mansion in the groves where they seduce and kill them by tearing away at their skin like cats. As the scene shifts to a young man named Jintoki, we learn that he had recently been acknowledged as a samurai due to his contribution in the war with the Imishi. Moreover, the governor sends Jintoki on a mission to find the ghosts who have been killing the samurai, and the movie takes a shocking turn as the young man embarks on this mission, only to realize that the two women were none other than his mother and wife. The film then takes a turn as Jintoki tries to convince the governor that he had gotten rid of the ghosts while doing his best to protect his ghost mother and wife. Besides being an intriguing entry in the horror genre, Kuroneko is also a dramatic, sad tale of a warrior returning to his family only to realize that he had been betrayed by one of his own kind. Additionally, the ghost women's determination to avenge their own deaths and punish the samurai makes this film a lot more eerie and haunting than any other standard war horror film. Yokai Monsters, 100 Monsters, 1968. Known as the first film in a trilogy that focuses on the yokai, Yokai Monsters, 100 Monsters was a fantasy horror film directed by Kimiyoshi Yasuda. The film was largely praised for its special effects technique known as tokusatsu, which revolved around actors in costumes and puppetry. This film is also often described as a much darker entry than its sequels and gives us quite a serious glimpse into the world of traditional yokai monsters. It follows a wealthy landowner who is determined to destroy a shrine and replace it with a brothel, and he even conducts several ceremonies that involve narrating tales of yokai, such as the Kasa Obake and a long-necked monster categorized as a Rukuro Kubi. While the ceremony continues with horrifying descriptions of the mythical umbrella-esque Kasa Obake and the Rukuro Kubi, the landowner forgets to conduct purification ceremonies to ward off evil spirits. This eventually results in the spirits taking over the place and driving the landowner and his supporters to insanity in order to teach them a lesson. In fact, the angered spirits even managed to drive the landowner out of town to escape death, and there's no doubt that this was quite an entertaining way to kickstart a horror trilogy. Yokai Monsters, Spook Warfare, 1968. Directed by Yoshiyuki Kuroda, Yokai Monsters Spook Warfare was a 1968 Japanese fantasy horror film that maintained the tokusatsu special effects style that caught the audience's eyes in the trilogy's first release. This sequel was inspired by traditional Japanese folktales surrounding several yokai. For instance, it introduces the Kappa, a water monster that typically resided in ponds and rivers and had a reputation for killing humans and animals alike. While most yokai movies are set within Japan, this film begins in the ruins of the Babylonian city of Ur, which was home to a dormant monster known as the Daimon. After the monster eventually wakes up after 4,000 years, it immediately decides to fly to Japan and attack a samurai known as Lord Hyoge Isobe and then take his form. While Isobe's family does not immediately realize that he's been replaced by a monster, the Daimon cannot maintain this persona for too long, and he eventually ends up tearing down all of the altars in the house while his actions catch the attention of a local Kappa. While this water monster senses Isobe's true identity as a monster, the Kappa soon embarks on a journey to recruit other yokai, such as the one-legged Kasa Obake, the terrorizing Fudakuchi Onna, and the rare Abura Sumashi. It eventually also recruits the clay monster Nupeppo and the long-necked Rokuro Kubi, and all of these yokai have a hard time believing the Kappa's description of the Daimon. However, they eventually agree to come together and protect Japan from this invading monster, and this film is a rather wholesome tale of these mythical creatures uniting to fight off a threat and defend their home. Yokai Monsters, Along with Ghosts, 1969. Known as the final entry in the Yokai Monsters trilogy, Along with Ghosts was directed by Kimiyoshi Yasuda and Yoshiyuki Kuroda and released in 1969. This film was based on the folktales of Momotaro and the Great Yokai War by Shigeru Mizuki, and it followed a criminal lord, Higuruma, as he tried to get rid of his rival. While he successfully manages to kill his rival, he goes a step further to kill an aged man who could be considered a witness to his crime, and eventually realized that the old man was taking care of a young girl, Mio. While the girl managed to escape, Higuruma could not let her get away with any evidence that might incriminate him, and he soon started hunting her down. Meanwhile, Mio tries to track down her father and enlists the help of a swordsman, Yakasuro, while Higuruma realizes that his crimes have finally caught up to him and that the cursed yokai have started haunting him. The Great Yokai War, 2005. Directed by Takashi Miike, The Great Yokai War is essentially a fantasy film that introduced several yokai from Japanese mythology that rose in popularity during the Edo period. The film was essentially a loose remake of Yokai Monsters: Spook Warfare, and the production also involved some insights from Shigeru Mizuki, a highly regarded manga artist who popularized yokai monsters. The story begins when a young boy named Tadashi Ino moves to a small town and finds himself being appointed as the year's Kirin Rider, aka the Protector of the Good. However, it's not long before he realizes that the title comes with a whole lot of responsibility, and he's pitted against an evil spirit known as Yasunori Kato. While Kato is introduced as a demon, we learn that he gains his powers from his anger towards the modern Japanese population's actions against local tribes and the yokai. Moreover, Kato also seems to have allied with other yokai to teach humanity a lesson, and the film follows Tadashi Ino's attempts to get rid of Kato. While The Great Yokai War is a modern twist on the traditional tales within the subgenre, the film pays homage to Japanese folklore and features a range of yokai such as Kirin, Bakeneko, Sune Kosuri, and Nopera Bo, to name a few. Spirited Away, 2001. While Spirited Away is inarguably one of the best Japanese animated fantasy films affiliated with Studio Ghibli, we're sure you might be wondering how this film made it on our list. As it turns out, Hayao Miyazaki sought inspiration from some Japanese folklore and even included a yokai monster with a spin in the story. Released in 2001, Spirited Away followed a young girl named Chihiro Sen Ogino as she realizes that she's ended up in the world of Japanese spirits called kami while trying to relocate to a new neighborhood. While these spirits are also inspired by Japanese Shinto folklore, the story takes an interesting turn when the witch Yubaba turns her parents into pigs. Yubaba's antagonistic character was inspired by yokai known as Yama-uba or Onibaba, or a type of female demon known as the Kijo. Even though they had human origins, the Yama-uba were eventually corrupted and turned into yokai, and they typically appeared in the form of kind old women who might lure people in with kindness. In the movie, Sen interacts with Yubaba quite a bit and even takes a job at her bathhouse while she tries to figure out a way to free herself and her parents and get back to the world of the living. The Bride from Hades, 1968. Based on a Japanese ghost story called Peony Lantern, The Bride from Hades is a 1968 Japanese horror movie directed by Satsuo Yamamoto. The film follows a man named Shinzaburo who ends up falling in love with the ghost of a dead woman named Otsuyu. The woman is also accompanied by an older woman named Oyone who tells Shinzaburo all about how he must marry her before Obon is over. While Shinzaburo's neighbor, Banzo, spots Otsuyu leaving his house and tells him that the woman has been dead for a long time, our protagonist has a hard time accepting the fact that he has strong feelings for a ghost, but he goes ahead with the ceremony and even takes her as a wife. While Shinzaburo and Otsuyu even spend a night together, Banzo spies on them and ends up getting chased off by Oyone's ghost, but this doesn't stop him from trying to protect his friend. Banzo even convinces Hakusuro to come with him to tell Shinzaburo to end his marriage to avoid death, but he barely pays any attention to their warnings. Unfortunately, the two women do end up taking Shinzaburo with them to the other world, while his friends discover his skeleton in the mortal world and accept that he has indeed died for his true love. Otsuyu's character was an example of a yurei, a ghost that originated in Japanese folklore, deceased humans who lingered around the human world. According to the original book, Otsuyu's spirit merely desired a companion in the afterlife, and the film's ending ensures that she got what she wanted in the form of Shinzaburo. Marvelous verdict! And with that, we've explored some of the most spine-chilling yokai horror movies, ranging from the legendary Yokai Monsters trilogy from the late 60s to later releases such as Spirited Away and The Great Yokai War. We hope you enjoyed exploring these gems of the yokai subgenre with us, and we'd love to hear your favorite picks in the comments down below. As always, if you enjoyed the content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Otherwise, thanks for watching, stay safe out there, and have a marvelous day.